Hey everyone, and welcome. You ever watch a truly great farce and just wonder, how on earth did they do that? Not just why it's funny, but how it's actually built, piece by chaotic piece. Well, today, we're not just going to analyze farce. We're going to pull back the curtain and give you the blueprint, the chef's recipe, for how to cook up that perfect comedic chaos right from scratch.
Okay, let's kick things off with this amazing quote from George Bernard Shaw that just gets right to the twisted heart of farce. Danger, destruction, torment. What more do we want to make us merry? It sounds kind of dark, right? But that's the whole point. Farce teaches us that our biggest, most satisfying laughs often come from watching people get into the absolute worst situations imaginable. So, let's put the literary theory aside for a minute. I want you to think of this explainer as a super practical guide. We're going to break down all the essential ingredients you need to whip up your very own masterpiece of mayhem. Ready? Let's get started.
First things first, you need a foundation. You can't just have chaos appear out of nowhere. You have to build an environment where it can thrive. This means creating a world that's just a little bit off, a little unreal. A place where the normal laws of physics and consequence are, let's just say, a little bit bendy.
And this gets right to the heart of that unreality. You know the term slapstick, right? Well, it literally comes from a prop, two pieces of wood that made a loud whack when you hit someone, without actually hurting them. And that sound, that fake crack, it's a huge signal to us, the audience. It creates this kind of psychological safe zone. It tells us, hey, don't worry, this isn't real. It gives us permission to laugh at the violence because we know nobody's actually getting hurt.
So how do you actually build this world? Simple. You turn the set into a machine designed for surprises. Just picture those classic French farces. The stage is a maze. You've got doors and windows everywhere, secret panels, hiding spots behind curtains. There are closets perfect for stuffing people into, and you might even have a Murphy bed that literally swallows people whole. Every single part of the set is there to create frantic entrances, panicked exits, and tons of near misses. The environment itself is practically a character.
So the whole point here, the big takeaway, is that the world of a farce is meant to be shaky. It's built to trip people up, to make them lose their balance and their sense of direction. It's a playground of constant shock and surprise, and that, right there, is where all the fun begins.
All right, so you've built your unstable playground. Now, who are you going to put in it? Well, in the world of farce, there are really only two main players. You've got the human victim, and then you have the inanimate object that seems hell-bent on destroying them.
And this is where things get really weird. There's this bizarre power shift that happens in a farce. The people, they become almost indestructible, like human sponges for punishment. They can take a beating and just keep on going. But at the same time, they become, well, incredibly stupid. Meanwhile, ordinary objects, a ladder, a door, a banana peel, they seem to gain intelligence. They become willful, complicated, and almost evil. It's like they have a personal grudge against our hero.
And to stack the deck against our poor hero even more, writers will do everything they can to rob them of their wits. They're stunned from a fall, they're drunk, they're half asleep, maybe they're just missing their pants, who knows? This basically turns them into zombies who just wander straight into disaster, often with this wide-eyed, vacant stare, completely oblivious to the next catastrophe that's waiting right around the corner.
And if you want to see this in action, look no further than the legends of silent film. Picture Buster Keaton, with that perfect stone face, wrestling a giant plank of wood that seems to have a mind of its own, whacking everyone except where he wants it to go. Or think about Charlie Chaplin, up on a high wire, not just trying to keep his balance, but also being actively tormented by a bunch of monkeys. It's the ultimate showdown, the clueless human versus the hostile world.
Okay, recipe check. We've got our crazy world, we've got our clumsy heroes, and our evil furniture. Now what? You gotta light the fuse. And that's the plot. The plot is a relentless engine designed to smash your characters and objects together with more and more speed and ferocity. And, believe it or not, there's actually a method to this madness. The plot of a farce usually follows a pretty clear formula for escalation. You start with a simple, desperate goal, right? Then you throw in a huge misunderstanding. After that, you add a ticking clock to ramp up the pressure, and then you just unleash a never-ending stream of interruptions. The real goal is to make sure that every single attempt to fix the problem only makes things 1,000 times worse. The famous sack scene from Molière's Scapin is a perfect example. A servant, Scapin, wants a little revenge, so he tricks his master into a sack. To justify beating him, he pretends there's one attacker. But he doesn't stop there. Oh no, the lie has to get bigger. So he invents another attacker, and
until he's pretending to fight off an entire gang, forcing him to take bigger and more ridiculous risks. Now that's the engine of escalation at work.
Okay, and if you really want to level up your chaos, here's the secret sauce from masters like Kaufman and Hart. Weave together multiple stories. Don't just have one person in a crisis. Have 3 or 4. The trick is to make them constantly crash into one another. So one character's desperate solution becomes the very thing that completely derails somebody else's plan. It's a beautiful, self-powering chaos machine. So, we've got our world, our people, and our plot. We've mixed all our ingredients, but what comes out of the oven? Well, just like any good recipe, these components can be combined in different ways to create very, very different flavors of farce.
And that really brings us to 2 main traditions. On one hand, you have popular farce. This is the stuff that feels kind of realistic, like, yeah, this could happen. It's all based on the idea that humans are just fundamentally foolish, and it usually wraps up with a nice, tidy ending that makes us feel like the world is orderly after all. But then you have intellectual farce. This kind is way more surreal, but it feels weirdly convincing. It's not about how silly people are, it's about how cruel and absurd life itself can be. Its endings are often messy and subversive, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the universe is as chaotic as the story we just watched. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that farce isn't just one single dish. This recipe gives you an incredibly powerful and flexible set of tools. You can use them to create something light and fun, or you can use them to make a really dark, challenging statement about the world we live in. The ingredients are simple, but what you can create is pretty much endless.
And that brings me to one last thought. When you look at the world around us, with its escalating misunderstandings and its mind-boggling chaos, you kind of have to wonder, behind all the slapstick and the slamming doors, could it be that farce, with its embrace of danger and destruction and torment, is actually the most realistic art form we have? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.